Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be bringing you another one of my Diablo 4 guides. This video is a follow-up to my previous video, which was the Diablo 4 Beginner's Guide. I'm not going to be going over that information again, so if you still haven't watched that video, it will be showing up on the top right-hand side of this video right about now, so you can go check that out first. I really recommend that you do because I go over some of the more basic things, and this one, even though it shouldn't really be considered an intermediate level, because, you know, if you're at Endgame, most players will see a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here still as basic, but I like to cover the stuff that is important for new players, and that is why I do these videos. I feel like there's already plenty of advanced guides out there. Once you're ready to really min-max your build and stuff like that, you're going to be following other content creators like Riker, Zizaran, Wudijo, as well as other people in the Diablo 4 community. I'm going to be sticking to some more basic stuff that I think are important for brand newcomers to the game. So let's begin things off. We're going to be starting off by talking about difficulty. Maybe you already started your first character, maybe you're already at endgame, but if you happen to be making an alt or something like that, this might be some important information for you. So you have this world tier statue in Kyovashad, and you also get to pick which world tier you're starting on whenever you create your character, and there are currently 4 world tiers that you can have in the game. Now, one of the things that I would like to point out is that if you are trying to be efficient when you are leveling your character, like a brand new character, if you are trying to be very efficient in how you go about doing this, the most efficient way is actually going to world tier 1, because your kill speed is going to be faster, monsters aren't going to be as hard, and you're just going to be gaining more experience than you would if you go to world tier 2, despite the fact that it says monsters give 20% increased experience and 15% more gold. 15% more gold, in my opinion, is really not that much. And you'll be killing monsters way faster than you will in World Tier 2. So, you know, if you are trying to be efficient, World Tier 1 until you finish the story is the fastest way of going about it. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't play World Tier 2? No, you should play whatever World Tier you feel like you're having the most fun in. It is very important to always consider how much fun you're going to be having and not just be a min-maxy type of player. But if you want to min-max, World Tier 1 is probably the most efficient way of leveling until you finish the story, and then you'll want to jump to World Tier 3 as fast as you possibly can. We're going to be talking more about how you'll jump into World Tier 3 and all of that jazz a little bit later in the video, but that's just the way to do it, because Veteran is mostly for people that just want to be a little bit more challenged and they want a little bit more attrition from the game. I played the whole thing in Veteran until I finished, and then I jumped into World Tier 3, but to each their own, choose difficulty however you see fit. Obviously, at the end of the day with this game, your ultimate objective is going to be reaching World Tier 4, because that is going to grant you increased rewards. So for instance, when you make the jump from World Tier 2 into World Tier 3, you are going to start getting sacred items drop, which are much more powerful. You're also going to be starting to get unique items drop, which is a tier above legendary, which again are much more powerful. You're going to gain access to nightmare sigils, which are going to unlock something called Nightmare Dungeons, which I haven't even done at this point because I'm really taking things easy. You're going to get access to Helltides, which I'm going to be talking more about in this video, and I'm going to be showing you what a Helltide looks like, because as it happens, there's a Helltide available right now in my game, so I got to hurry up to make sure that I cover all of my ground as well as cover the Helltide. There's also going to be champion monsters with damage resistance auras, and you know, you're just going to be getting better loot. Basically, the idea is the higher you go into difficulty, the better the loot is going to be, and then eventually you're going to get the Torment, and in Torment you're going to get ancestral items, and you're going to get new unique items. So on World Tier 3, you're going to start seeing unique items, and then on World Tier 4 you're going to get an additional additional unique items dropping, as well as you're going to get 200 increased experience, 15 more gold, and monsters become much tougher. So basically, you know, the harder difficulty, the harder monster is going to be. But your ultimate objective, if you plan on playing the game for that long, is going to be to reach World Tier 4 as fast as you can. But just keep in mind that at the very beginning, World Tier 1 is actually the most efficient way of leveling up a character. Now, another thing that I want to bring up is there are some tooltips that are not properly shown in your character. This is something that I didn't talk about in my first video because I don't think it's particularly important if you're just starting out and stuff like that. But these are a couple of options that I would recommend that you turn on. If you go to your game options, you can go into gameplay. And if you start scrolling down, you'll notice that there is advanced tooltip compare. You'll want to turn this on. This is whenever you are comparing two items. I'll show you guys an example here in a second. And then advanced tooltip information. You'll definitely want to turn this on as well, because, you know, at this point in the game, if you've already passed that section in where you're like, oh, I'm kind of a newbie and I don't care this much about all of these stats. At this point in the game, you'll want to start caring more about these stats. These are going to be decisions that you're going to have to make. So for instance, if you look at, if I'm looking at an item here and I hit the compare button, you'll notice that now I get a lot more detailed. Maybe if you haven't turned this option on in your game and you compare these two screens, you'll notice that you're probably not going to have as many details as I do, because, you know, you have like, oh, we have plus 1% resistance to all elements, plus 3.0% critical strike chance. And you can scroll down and it will also tell you the things that you lose if you equip this item. This becomes much more important the later you are in the game, so that you get a more accurate representation of what each item is giving you. This is the reason why I didn't bring this up in the previous video, but I'm bringing it up now. You'll definitely want to turn those two options on. It also tells you the range that you can get from each of the things. So for instance, if you look at a certain legendary item, you can now see that this legendary affix has a range. So whereas without having the advanced tooltips, it would just tell you, oh, this thing, each wave deals 55% less damage than the last one. But with the advanced one, you'll know that the blood wave fires through additional waves, and that the range of this legendary affix can go from 60% to 50%, with 50% being the best possible outcome of the affix in this specific item. This one's confusing because it's kind of like a nerf, but you can see, for instance, in this one, the Cold Skeletal Mages cast a Blizzard that deals 582, and that goes from a range of 560 to 672. So you know that 582 is not that great. But you can find a better version of this affix that goes all the way into 672, which, you know, is useful information to have, so be sure to turn those things on. Now, this is not really a big tip, but this is something that a lot of people ask me, because by default, when you are on console, they default your UI for some reason to left corner. Oops, I forgot to save, my bad. But they default your HUD configuration to left corner, right? Which looks like what you see right now in the left corner. All this stuff is clumped up in the left corner. The reason they do this is because on consoles you can have co-op, couch co-op, so you can have another player play with you, and that will show up on the other corner, right? But, you know, if you're playing by yourself, it's kind of dumb that by default the UI is just like off to the thing. And a lot of people, when they're playing on console, they ask me, Rurikhan, how'd you get your UI centered? And there's an option here. This is just something that I want to bring up because I get this asked a lot. You can just swap it up to centered. And if for some reason you happen to be on PC and you're like, you know what, I actually don't like it centered, I would rather have it on the left. You can change it to PC to be on the left as well. The option, I believe, is pretty much in the same place. So I'd recommend you guys check that out if that is something that you are curious about. Now, the next thing is going to be about enchanting items. So I talked a lot about items, about putting legendary affixes on items. One of the things that I didn't talk about was enchanting. So the way that enchanting works is as you play more and more of the game, you're going to start finding more and more items, and eventually you're going to start looking at stats that you want. So for instance, this is not, by the way, this is not the most meta thing that you should be doing, so don't pay too much attention to the specific stat that I'm chasing, because I'm not exactly sure if it's a good stat for people to chase. But in my case, I want to chase thorns. So if you look at my gear, a lot of it is going to have thorns on it, just because that is something that I want. Like you can see here, I've re-rolled a stat into thorns. Now you might be wondering, how do I know that you've re-rolled that stat? Now notice how all of the stats in this particular piece of kit have like a little diamond symbol. Those are the stats that came with the item. Then one of those has like a little circular blue thing. You can see it, which is the thorn stat in these pants. That means that I've re-rolled that specific stat to go in the thorns. So the way that things go is you usually, when you are looking for an item, particularly an item that you're planning on, you know, putting a legendary affix in, like let's say you find a rare item and like, oh, I like the stats on this item, I'm going to put a legendary affix in this item. You will want to enchant the item before you apply the legendary affix, because enchanting items that are legendary costs more materials and more rare materials and stuff like that. So you'll want to enchant some of these stats. And you guys are like, okay, but what the hell does this mean? Well, you can go up to this guy and you can go over here and go, okay, I'm going to go into this item and I'm going to replace a stat. Now, in my case, it's only going to let me replace the thorn stat on it because that was the stat that I rolled. But in other items, you'll be able to have a choice. So let's say, for instance, if we go to the helmet, which I believe I haven't re-rolled anything here, you can re-roll any of these stats. So for instance, here you don't want the willpower or you don't want the ranks of the Cripify or 35. Like in this case, I would probably re-roll life regeneration. You can select this and then you can enchant it. Now, like I said, if you're planning on applying a legendary affix into an item, thus making it a legendary, you'll want to re-roll the stat before because then it's going to cost you less. Like you can see, you have a little bit more rare materials present in this item. So it's going to make my re-roll a little bit more expensive, but I'll re-roll once just to show you guys what it looks like. So you pick the stat that you like the least, and then you hit enchant, and it is going to give you other stats that you can choose from. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose armor. This was not really something that I wanted to do. It's not a big deal. But you just choose whatever other stat you want and you replace it. Now, the thing about it is once you re-roll a stat on an item by using the enchanting feature, that is the only stat that you can re-roll. So all of the other stats are now set in stone. You can't change those anymore. You just have to keep re-rolling that one stat if you want to get better things. Also, an important thing is, as you'll notice, whenever you enchant an item, the cost for enchanting it again grows exponentially. I mean, well, not exponentially literally, but you get the idea. It becomes really prohibitively expensive the more you do it. To give you an idea, I probably spent, like on these pants that I've re-rolled the stat to thorns. Like I said, I'm not sure you should be doing that. This is just me being dumb. But on these pants that I re-rolled my thorn stat, I must have spent like almost 2 million gold re-rolling to get that thorn stat. And let me tell you right now, it was not worth it. But I'm stubborn and I wanted to do it like that. So just keep that in mind. Re-rolling is something that is cool if you're chasing a particular stat, like you might want to chase your main stat, you might want to chase cooldown reduction, you might want to chase something else. What I've been chasing is thorns, but to each their own. So just make sure to experiment with it a little bit and usually try doing it, if possible, on a rare item before you apply a legendary affix to it. Let's keep that in mind. Now, another thing that I wanted to bring up on the last video, but I didn't because the video was already too long, is gambling. Now, there is gambling in the game. I don't mean like literal gambling, but there's a currency that you get for doing world events and for picking up sometimes from certain chests, which are these Obols. Now, you'll notice that these have a cap, so eventually you'll stop picking them up. So whenever you get close to the cap, you want to make sure that you spend them. Now, the way that you spend them is there's going to be this dude, which in this map is all the way over here, which is the Purveyor of Curiosities. Plenty of towns have this dude, even some smaller towns. So just go over to the Purveyor of Curiosities, and they're going to give you a selection of items that you can go ahead and spend these Obols on. And you might be thinking to yourself, man, but I don't want to spend these Obols. I don't want to buy these items. This seems like a waste of my time. Okay, if you don't want to do that, then what you want to do at least, if you don't want to waste your time gambling away in items, then you make sure that you speak with them because there's an option here of a bunch of different items. So usually you can try and shoot for something that maybe it's a slot that you don't have something very good. Like in my case, I don't have something that great on chests, so I can go ahead and roll on a tunic and see if maybe I'll get lucky. And looks like we got like a yellow. You can go again. Oh, we got a legendary. Nice. I'll check that out in a bit. But basically, there's a chance for you to get legendaries, rares, and there's also a chance for you to get nothing good at all. So you can gamble this currency like this, and you choose basically whatever is like your weakest slot on your character and just roll for something there. But if you don't want to do it and you don't want to waste a currency, then at the very least, go down to the very bottom and buy a couple of Whispering Keys. And you might wonder, well, what the hell are these keys for? Well, every now and then you're going to encounter like these special chests that are locked. These are the keys that open those chests. So if you don't buy anything, then at the very least, when you're coming close to the cap of the currency, which at the start, I believe it's around 500. If you're coming up on the cap of the currency, then at the very least buy a Whispering Key, so that way you're not wasting the currency that you're getting while you're playing the game. That's just my recommendation. Also, I'm curious. Let's see what we got. Basic skills again, 20% damage reduction. Okay, that's not that great. I don't really care that much. But, I mean, I don't care that much about it now. Who knows? Maybe later down the line, I'll actually need it. But anyways, those are just like some basic systems that I wanted to bring up again. Now, I want to touch up a little bit on Endgame, which is by the time you finish the story, I'm not going to give you spoilers or anything like that, so don't worry about it. But by the time you finish the story, you're going to be looking to basically level up into World Tier 3 so that you gain access to more events and stuff like that, which is what I was talking about earlier. You start on World Tier 1, you can change it to World Tier 2, but in order to unlock World Tier 3, you're actually going to be required to do a special dungeon. This is called a Capstone dungeon. So in this case, for the World Tier 3, there should be a dungeon that pops up, I think, here. On my case, it doesn't show up anymore because I've already completed it. But there should be a dungeon that pops up here, and you have to be in World Tier 2, so you can't be in World Tier 1 for this one, and that is the Capstone dungeon. It basically consists of kind of like 2 dungeons and a boss fight. So you'll go ahead and you'll just do those 2 dungeons, you'll be good. Those are going to be slightly harder than regular dungeons, so you might want to do a little bit of min-maxing for your character. Again, it depends on how powerful your character is feeling at that given moment. It could be harder, could be easier, depending on player skill, depending on a lot of factors, but you'll definitely want to go ahead and do that Capstone dungeon as like one of your first objectives once you finish the story, so that you can jump into World Tier 3 so that you can start getting better loot, because you do not want to be stuck in World Tier 2 for very long because the loot is not going to be as good as the stuff on World Tier 3. So that's how you do that. And then eventually when you get to World Tier 3, you'll want to start working towards the objective of going to World Tier 4. And that is going to involve doing yet another Capstone dungeon, which is tuned for characters at level 70. Even though I've heard from people that you can do this much earlier, I even came in here at like level 53. And I felt like if I was really patient, I could probably do it. But it just takes too long, so I was like, I'll just level up a little bit, get a little bit more powerful, then I'll go in there and bust the crap open. But yeah, these are the ways in which you will advance through the different difficulty tiers, the Capstone dungeons, and you'll definitely want to do them as fast as you can within reason. Now, in my case, I'm currently on World Tier 3, and I'm going to be leveling up a little bit in this World Tier before going for the Capstone dungeon, and then going to World Tier 4, just min-maxing my character a little bit and doing all of that stuff. But once you reach that World Tier 3, one of the things that you're going to be focusing on is Renown. Now, Renown, the way to view it is basically you go to the world map and you press triangle, and you'll want to level up Renown on all of these different regions because, as you can see, you're going to be getting some very important things. So on your very first Renown reward, you're going to get 1 skill point. On your second Renown reward, you're going to get additional potion capacity. On your third Renown reward, you're going to get another skill point. Then on your fourth one, you're going to get plus 80 max Obols. This is probably like the least valuable one in my opinion. The gold I don't even count because this gold is nothing. Like you'll sell an item for 100,000 gold. So 60,000 gold is like, pfft. I don't even understand why there's gold in these rewards because it's completely meaningless at every level. Like at the level you get your first reward, those 3,000 gold are worthless. At the level you get your second reward, you could basically add a 0 to all of this and it would still not be that big a deal, in my personal opinion. Like you could have 30,000 gold on your first reward, 100,000 gold on the second one, and it would still not be that big of a deal. So the gold reward is whatever. What you really want is the stuff that's below. But anyways, on the 4th reward, you get max Obols, and on the 5th reward, you get 4 Paragon points, which are very, very, very important. So you'll definitely want to work on your Renown as fast as you possibly can. So as you can see, I'm still working on that throughout the different regions. I actually have a lot of grinding to do in order to get all of that Renown up. But yeah, and you might be wondering, how do I get more Renown in a region? And you can actually see it right below the rewards, which, like I told you, in case you missed it, you open up the map. And once you open up the map, you press the triangle. Well, I keep saying press triangle because I'm playing on console with a controller. On PC, there'll probably be a button prompt in there that will tell you, oh, here's how you view rewards in the map. But once you go to the reward screen, you can actually see below it how you can gain additional Renown. You discover all of the areas. Each area discovered gives you 1 Renown. each stronghold that you do gives you 100 renown. And to put things into perspective, like in order for me to get this this fourth reward on the dry steps, it is going to require 80 more renown. It's going to require 500 total renown. So each of the strongholds that you do, which I didn't really talk about strongholds last time, but strongholds are these things that are going to be marked on your map like this. And you basically go in here and there's going to be some kind of an event. And once you complete that event, you complete the stronghold, boom, it's done, whatever. But as I was saying, so each of these is going to give you a certain amount of points. Side quests give you a lot of points. I've actually been doing the side quests because they're pretty fun, and I really enjoy doing the side quests. So that's kind of like what I've been focusing on. But if you don't want to do side quests, if you just want to like mindlessly bash side dungeons, you can do that too. It's 30 points for each of those, and Altars of Lilith. And speaking of Altars of Lilith, this is potentially the first thing that you should be doing whenever it comes to Renown. And the reasoning is because each Altar of Lilith is going to grant you, I already mentioned Altars of Lilith in the first video, but I'm going to mention it again because whenever you are doing the Renown grind, the most important thing for you to do is hands down collecting all of the Altars of Lilith. Now, my recommendation is go to d4builds.gg or some other website that has this, and they'll have a map there that shows you where all of the Altars of Lilith are. Because look, here's what I found organically, right? We can see organically. Well, in the dry steps, in the fractured peaks and dry steps is no longer organic because this is what I finished the game and I was like, okay, I'm going to go by order and just find all of them. So I picked up everything on fractured peaks and I picked up everything on dry steps. But on the other regions, it's been pretty organic. So here's what I found organically. In a Hawazar, I found 3 out of 34. In Kyrgyzstan, I found none out of 31. And in Skosgland, I found 5 out of 34. So maybe I'm just blind, maybe I'm just old, or maybe these things are just kind of really hard to find. So my recommendation is don't stress about finding Altars of Lilith on your first playthrough. Just enjoy it until you finish the story. And then once you finish the story, go for your Capstone dungeon. And then after that, just go straight for Altars of Lilith, open up the map, shoot up a podcast or something, and then just mindlessly find all of them with a map that tells you where they are. That'd be my recommendation. If you want to find them all organically, go for it. Each player will have their own objectives. But if you are grinding Renown, what I would prioritize would hands down be Altars of Lilith. Because the thing is, you're going to need to find them. Altars of Lilith give you massive bonuses to stats. And you're going to want that because eventually, when you get to the point where you're doing your Paragon tables, you will notice that some of these nodes have specific stats. Like in here, 232 will out of 260 willpower. Basically, me just finding a bunch of Altars of Lilith is going to fill this without me even having to worry about putting more points into this stat. So that's why Altars of Lilith are so important. They're going to be unlocking things. I mean, besides the passive benefits that you get from just getting the stats, they're going to help you unlock the nodes that you put points into on the Paragon table. So Altars of Lilith, I cannot stress this enough. Super, super, super important. Now, another thing that is going to become available to you once you get to World Tier 3 are going to be Grim Favors. I'm not going to give you the details as to what this thing is, the Tree of Whispers, and what's going on here. Just think of these in the same way if you've played Diablo 3. In Diablo 3, you had those things that you did where you did a bunch of quests, then you'd go back to Tyrael, and Tyrael will give you a box of good stuff, right? It's kind of the same thing. They're going to have you do specific requests. So like, for instance, in here, they're like, find a corpse and defeat the highway haunter. So if I go over here, there's going to be like something here for me to go and kill. You go there, you kill it, you gain 1 Grim Favor. Once you get the 10 Grim Favors, you can go to this tree and it'll give you a box. Usually they'll give you 3 choices so that you can kind of target the item that you're getting. So, but those 3 choices are also random. So it can be like, oh, here's a weapon box or a completely random box or a feet box. And you get to choose, do you want like some boots? Do you want a weapon? Or do you want something completely random? And it can be something else. Like it could be jewelry, chest piece, and gloves. And you choose whichever one you want. And you know, there's a high chance that this thing will have at least a rare or maybe even a legendary or maybe even a unique. So this is how you do that stuff. You can get more Grim Favors for doing things that are slightly harder. So if you go and you do this dungeon that I have over here, for instance, you're going to gain 5 Grim Favors, and then you could turn those into the tree, and you'll get an item. So this is kind of how you can do these items. And then finally, a very important thing is going to be whenever you log into the game and you're at the end game, the first thing that you want to do is open the map and zoom out and look for events that can potentially be happening. So like, for instance, if you pay attention here, there's currently a Helltide event happening. And Helltides in particular are super important because you're going to be getting rare materials. You're going to be getting things that you can kind of like target loot a little bit as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into this Helltide. And I'm going to do my best to very briefly explain to you how a Helltide works and why you should always jump into a Helltide. So for starters, whenever there's a Helltide around, you'll notice that this thing pops up right next to the map, and you can see that we already have a chest over here. So this is a tortured gift of rings and is going to require 75 cinders. So whenever you kill monsters in a Helltide, they're going to drop a special thing. As you can see right there, aberrant cinders. So you'll go ahead and you'll pick those up, and we now have 4. So naturally, you'll want to kill a whole lot more than just those dudes, right? So we're going to go ahead and kill a couple more. But the objective is Damn it, I always try to do the square attack and I always get stuck on the horse. But the objective here is you kill as many enemies as possible, as fast as possible, to collect as many cinders as possible. Now, these cinders do not carry over into future events, so you'll have to spend these cinders before the event is over, which is why they prominently feature both your cinder count as well as the duration of the Helltide event, so that you are well aware, okay, listen, you're collecting these things, but you got to make sure that you turn them into something before the Helltide ends. Now, these chests can also contain rare materials that you're going to be needing for upgrading items at different levels and stuff like that, which is another reason why you'll want to go ahead and engage in the Helltides. And then finally, one of the things that you will definitely want to do is, you know, if you're trying to be optimal, you'll want to min-max. So for instance, I have a bunch of whispers in this area, and there's a Helltide in this area. This is the perfect time to go ahead and do whispers, with the exception, naturally, of dungeons, because dungeons are going to take you away from the Helltide area. But any other such event that is happening in a Helltide, specifically in regards to... Wait, why am I... All right, I teleported to a town. Specifically in regards to like this whisper stuff, you basically get to double dip because you get the cinders from the Helltide and you get to do the whisper stuff as well. Always pay attention to what's in each of the boxes in case you're looking for something. So like, for instance, in here, we have a weapon box. I don't know if that's going to be a heavy weapon box or a light weapon box. This is a heavy weaponry. I'm assuming that heavy weaponry means two-handers. This is going to require 150 cinders to open, and you're going to get a two-hander with the potential for that two-hander to be a legendary. But notice how now I'm also double dipping, and I'm also getting whisper things. So one of the things that they have you do in this area is just kill a bunch of monsters. So I'm also harvesting. You can see them pop up right now below the map. I'm harvesting whispers whilst also doing the Helltide. So again, just double dipping. These are things that you'll always want to do. You'll want to double dip as much as you possibly can. Eventually in some of these events, or maybe through loot, I believe that world bosses is how you get them. You're going to start getting nightmare sigils, which give you access to nightmare dungeons. Although I can't talk too much about nightmare dungeons because I haven't really done them yet. Like I said, I'm taking my sweet time with the game. I'll eventually do something talking about nightmare dungeons as well. The best ways of getting like nightmare sigils. I'm sure that somebody's already got a video on that though, because that feels like it's a much more min-maxy endgamey thing, so you should probably be able to find that information fairly easily. But nightmare dungeons are going to have modifiers and things that are going to make it significantly harder than regular dungeons, so these are things that you'll eventually progress and go into. But yeah, don't be scared of jumping into a harder difficulty. Test things out, see if your build feels right. And if it doesn't feel right, you can always jump back into the lower difficulty, grind a little bit more, get some better items and whatnot, and then jump back into the higher difficulty at a later date. But anyways, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and capitalize on this Helltide, get my whisper stuff going, get my grind going. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys in the streams and in the game. If you guys enjoyed this video, if it was helpful to you in any way, make sure to hit it up with a like. It really, really helps me out. I really appreciate all the support that you guys have shown me over the last couple of days. Because, like, with my review in particular, you guys were extremely kind. So thank you very much for showing up, watching the review, a review that was incredibly late because obviously I didn't get early access. I wasn't able to, do it on embargo and stuff. So, yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for watching the content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Subscribe for more videos about Diablo 4 and other games that I'm going to be covering. And, yeah, have a nice day. Stay strong. Stay safe. Peace out.